Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel Nomad and welcome to another Top 5 Wednesday. This week we will be doing books from before the online book community. So this is books that I read before Goodreads, before Instagram, before Facebook groups, anything like that. So the date we're starting from for me is going to be January 2010 because that's when I first opened my Goodreads account. So without much further ado, I'm going to start straight into the top 5, and instead of doing a top 5, I'm going to go by age. So the books I read when I was the youngest, and then coming to more of my just probably high school, because when I started university is when I opened up my first Goodreads account. The series that I read, there are actually 3 different series, but I read all the books and I love them, is the Deltora series. This is by Emily Rodda. She is a middle grade Australian author, and Deltora Quest. Then you've got Deltora Quest 2 and Deltora Quest 3. And they have these wonderful holographic little elements to the books, which is obviously the best thing ever when you're a kid, having like something shiny to look at. Like, I'm not kidding. Shiny dragon, shiny moving dragon, amazing. But yeah, so these books were absolutely fantastic. I loved them. I think they were the ones that really started to introduce me into fantasy, like definitely Tamora Pierce's The Wolf Speaker, but I quickly hooked onto these ones and I just developed a real great love for the quest cycle, the series, and kind of like that RPG style where, you know, you're going through different stages of a quest. And so just for a little information, the first series, Deltora Quest, is reclaiming the jewels on the Deltora belt so the king can take over rulership again, away from the evil overlord as such. The second series is to retrieve a magical pipe that was lost in the Shadowland, so very dark and scary covers, these ones. And the third series is rediscovering the dragons of Deltora that were once thought to be lost but are coming back into existence. Next up, I couldn't lift the entire series because my arms would have fallen off, so instead I'm holding up one of my favourite covers, and that is the Series of Unfortunate Events. I read the first book in a day and absolutely loved it, and I just had to wait to the next one, which was really unfortunate, but I kept reading the first one over and over. So this one is actually really exciting. This series is clever in a way, so it's a great for like an young teen reader because it really gets the reader thinking about word usage. So instead of just being telling a story, it's being clever and roundabout and circumspect, and it's all these terrible sarcastic things. And I think it's just rewarding as a younger reader, when I was reading this, that I could get the jokes, because you know when you're young and your parents are laughing and you have no idea why, you didn't know what was so funny about it, but when you start to get those kind of more sophisticated jokes and start to develop an understanding of more sophisticated language, I think Lemony Snicket does that so well, of slowly introducing you into this sophistication, and it is just such an amazing story. Very, very grim, very, very unfortunate. So going up in a little bit older, I started to discover these, I think, more technically what would be high school. I was in middle school, so in Australia that's about year 7, year 8. I started reading manga. We were learning Japanese at school and I started reading manga, and my friend started reading manga too, and so we just started sharing, and it was just such a fun experience to say, oh my god, have you read that chapter yet? And it was amazing how fast and how easily I adapted to reading in the opposite direction. So this is one of my absolute favourite series. It is Orion High School Host Club. I mainly loved the ridiculous. This was no exception. It is basically a girl who is mistaken for a boy and is made to be the lackey as such for a host club, which is basically like an escort service but without the sex in high school. So these very rich female students get to spend time with these very rich male students who are also part of the host club. But mainly what you read it for is the ridiculous things that the host club get up to, and it was such a lark. I also absolutely love the Rurouni Kenshin series. This is called like a romantic samurai story, and it follows Rurouni Kenshin in the 1800s, 1870s I believe, after the Meiji Revolution, and Japan trying to stable itself during that time, and samurais were outlawed. So it is an absolutely fascinating read. So next up we have some of my favourite books from high school English, and I had the absolute joy of reading Macbeth, which I still adore to this day, and I loved it. It is one of Shakespeare's most evocative and powerful, in my opinion, plays, so it was just really great to read it, especially when teachers were choosing things like Romeo and Juliet, which I don't think appeals to me as such. It doesn't have as strong or as vivid imagery and emotions and drama that Macbeth has, so it was fantastic introduction to Shakespeare. And my final choice I have for Top 5 Wednesday is my Year 12 English book of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a copy of that one. I've been holding out to find the absolute perfect copy, but we did pair that with The Crucible by Arthur Miller. Now, what I loved about reading both of these is that they're written only a few decades apart. Like, I think The Crucible was written more in the 50s and Ken Kesey's book was written in the 70s. So it was really interesting to see this depiction of American society and how similar it is. It was, you know, years apart, but there was still this fallout in society, almost as if the Crucible fallout was still being played out in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So The Crucible is one of Arthur Miller's famous plays. It is set in Salem during the witch trials, but it is also a shadow of the McCarthy era during the 50s and 60s. Whereas One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest looks at people who challenge society in any kind of way and how they're being crushed by this machine of society. And the way it was written is just absolutely stunning. So The Crucible by Arthur Miller and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey were my two favourite books I read in any English class at high school. So I absolutely adore them. I'm thinking of getting the Penguin edition, very similar to this, of the Ken Kesey novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because I think it really manages to capture some very important images that are used throughout the novel. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed my selection. Yes, I didn't include Harry Potter, Tamora Pierce, Sabriel. You know I've read those ones because I mentioned them quite a few times on my channel before. But I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a bite to show a bit of a snapshot of how my love for fantasy and historical fiction and very clever wordplay developed. So let me know down below in the comments, what is your favourite book that you read before you joined the online community? I think I had it a little bit easier because I had at least 19 years worth of reading time before I joined the online community. So how many years was it before you joined? And what was your favourite book before you became immersed into the beauty that is the online book community? Alright, so I'll see you all next time. Happy reading. Bye!